The views and opinions that are expressed during this program are those of the DJs, guests, or callers, and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of KNON Radio or Agape Broadcasting Foundation.
And good afternoon and welcome to Lambda Weekly. I'm Dave Taffet, and I'm here in the studio with Lerone Landis. Josh is on the board with us. Patti will be back with us next week. She's social distancing. Where is she this week? Someplace glamorous?
Is Patti ever going anywhere glamorous?
No.
Yeah.
She's home.
Yeah.
Our guest today is Scott Poggensee, and Scott, if the name is familiar, was supposed to be on with us a few weeks ago. Sorry, Scott, our phones here weren't working.
But they are now.
Scott, are you there? Oh, okay, there you are.
I was gonna try to stay away for a second just to give you a little panic, but no, it's working. I think.
And you did.
That's him getting back at us for that. We appreciate your coming back a few weeks later.
I was going to say, is Patti not here again when I'm on? This seems to be
we schedule that purposely. Yeah, we schedule that purposely.
You know, we always joke about this. Well, it does seem to fall like that.
Yeah.
Scott's been on, at least 5 or 6 times now.
Yeah, now Scott has been on, if he sounds familiar, talking about the Brandon Woodruff case. Brandon's in prison so far for, is it 10 years or it's more by now?
15 years now.
It's 15 years now.
Wow.
For the murder of his parents that he couldn't possibly have committed. What convicted him was evidence like he was at S4 later that night on Cedar Springs.
And hiding
basically
they basically, brought out that he was coming out and hiding his sexuality from his church friends and school friends, stuff like that.
So because you're closeted, that makes you a murderer.
Well, it wasn't really closeted.
That
was just coming out. There's a difference.
Exactly.
There is. He wasn't living his life closeted. He was just coming out at the time. He was 19. So
yeah.
And there is other evidence. Now, you've brought us some clips of a podcast that you've been doing. Tell me, how would you like to work those in? Do you want to start with one of those?
Yeah, I mean, if you want, I can give everybody kind of just a real quick synopsis in case.
Yeah, give us an intro to this.
Sure. So basically, Brandon was, as you said, a 19-year-old kid. He was very confused about his sexuality, and his parents ended up being murdered. He was the last person to see them, so they, of course, looked at him, and there were some things that were going on at the time, but basically they circled in on him very quickly, and within 5 days of the bodies being found of his parents, he was in jail, and they were building a case against him. It's to me, it's just crazy because of every case that I've ever looked at, this has the least evidence of any kind of culpability to his actual parents' murders. I mean, it's just absolutely insane.
And so what is this first clip that we're going to hear?
So the first clip is, this is, I think, about maybe 6 or 7 episodes ago, and one of Brandon's ex-friends named Mike Etherington, he was in the interview room with Ranger Collins. Ranger Collins was the lead investigator in the case for the Texas Rangers. And this was the day after Brandon was arrested. And he was basically just trying to interview Mike to get some more information because some of the information that Mike had given to the police was used to arrest Brandon. And it's so funny that they actually used the information first before they even did a formal interview. But once they had the arrest warrant, once they had Brandon in jail, they then brought Mike in to do a formal interview. And what we're going to hear is basically a part of that interview where Ranger Collins, I think, at some point kind of starts to realize, holy crap, we might have gotten the wrong guy.
Give me just a minute, Mike. I mean, really,
I'm sorry about that. I understand looking at it now from where y'all are getting at. So it's just the trickiest thing now that this computer is missing.
well, how do you know which computer is missing?
Well, everybody said that, have you not heard that somebody had the computer, his friends, everybody, he's not, nothing to do with his computer's gone.
What's that? Who's saying that?
My mom had told me that the computer is gone. Like, 'cause she said that she needed to tell y'all to get that computer.
Did you catch it? If you did, you're a better detective than Ranger Collins. The reason that this is so key is that absolutely no one, and I mean no one, knew that there was a computer missing, except here. Not one. So the only person that would know that there was a computer missing would be the person that took it. And I can attest, after looking at the crime scene photographs, that it would be completely irrational and inconceivable that anyone could go into this house to steal a computer without noticing the two people dead on the couch. It can only be reasonable to assume that if someone stole a computer from that house between the time that they died and the time their bodies were found, that the ones that took the computer were also the ones that killed Dennis and Norma. How this fact got past Ranger Collins is absolutely beyond me. This should have been caught and should have been investigated. The level of police work done in this case is absolutely disgusting, and the one moment that proves it more than any point is this. There's a person sitting right in front of you telling you that there's a computer missing from your capital murder crime scene, and you just go on like nothing happened. What in the literal hell? If anyone has any explanation as to how Mike or his mom would know that there was a computer missing from the crime scene, please let me know. I'm very eager to hear from you.
Okay, Scott, you know what Lerone and I were just saying?
Mm-hmm.
We like that you use music as a bed.
We love the music.
Yeah.
Well, we try to, one of the things that's obviously a challenge anytime that you're dealing with a format that's just audio is, trying to make it interesting for people to listen to, and that's been a very challenging thing to do. Because personally, I think I'm the most boring person in the world. So me just sitting up there and talking for 45 minutes, I feel like I have to put some things in there that interest people.
No, you're not, Scott, at all.
It's an interesting case. What Lerone and I do to make up for that is we just say whatever is on our minds. And bizarre
just
things
say the most outrageous stuff.
Yeah.
But that's a huge key. That is like huge. So that Brandon's counsel or anyone pressed this fact?
This is new evidence, isn't it?
No, this was evident. This was something that was the day after Brandon was arrested. So the interview was there. The problem is that the state never called Mike as a witness. And when that's the case, you can't really cross-examine things that he says unless he says something that is exculpatory to Brandon. Now, you and I, listening to it now and analyzing, kind of armchair quarterbacking it, we sit there and think, well, wait a second, if this person knows that there's a computer missing from a capital murder crime scene and nobody else would know, then that would say, okay, wait a second, this is proving that somebody else was there, and it was probably the people that are, saying that this computer's missing. But I don't know if they just, missed it or if they for some reason couldn't introduce it. I'm not sure. I'm not an attorney, so I can't say for sure. But yeah, obviously there's no way that someone's going to know that there's a computer missing unless they were the ones that took it, because nobody else in the whole world, not the family, not nobody knew that there was a computer missing.
But did the police actually release this recording before the trial?
They released it to the defense, yes, but not to the public.
Okay.
And you don't know if the defense press jumped on this.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't actually asked Catherine Ferguson, who's the person that was Brandon's trial attorney that we talked to. he had two trial attorneys, and the other one, Jerry Spencer Davis, he's since retired and refuses to talk to me or anyone else about the case. But Catherine Ferguson has been amazing to work with and given us everything that we've asked for and given us a lot of time because she says, and she'll tell you, that this case still haunts her today because she absolutely, positively believes that Brandon's innocent.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm not sure if this particular item, I've never pressed her and really asked her, hey, why didn't you use this more, or was there a reason we couldn't use this, or whatever. But it's just something that I found. There were several things that I found going back and kind of, like I said, armchair quarterbacking it, and looking at information and taking the infinite time that I have, right, to go back and analyze all of this evidence. So
now, what this adds to is, for somebody who hasn't heard anything about this case before and didn't hear the other shows that we've done, the crime scene was gruesome. I mean, it was just very bloody. Mm-hmm. So for somebody to have walked in, like you said, and just taken the computers and not noticed two bodies with a room that was covered in blood is beyond reason. Is there a possibility, though, that somebody else could have taken this computer? Is there anybody else who could have taken it that Mike would have been in touch with, like Brandon's sister?
I mean, it's always very possible that that they could have just heard through the grapevine or heard that someone else took this computer, but that was not the information that Mike was giving up. The information that
there wasn't a grapevine, though. I mean, what grapevine would there have been? Because it's a crime scene. Nobody could get into the house.
Right, exactly, and that's what I'm saying. You got to remember, this is only 6 days after the bodies were found. So there was very little information. In fact, Brandon was interviewed, I think, 2 days before this particular interview, right before he was arrested, and Ranger Collins said something about there was no struggle, and the gunshots were very quick. And Brandon turns to him and says, "Wait a second, are you telling me that my parents were shot?" Like, at this point, that family, nobody even knew really, what was going on with the crime scene. So, yes, you're exactly right. For somebody to know an intimate detail like this, that there's a computer missing, it would be impossible for anyone to...
And one of the other details that's kind of important is the crime scene part of it, the bathroom, was cleaned up because there's blood all over the place, and then all of a sudden the bathroom was wiped clean.
Exactly.
And
there was a whole trail. Yeah, there was a whole trail of blood that was dripping from the couch to the guest bathroom, and then in the guest bathroom was literally cleaned so well that there was not one trace of DNA, not one drop of blood, which shows obviously that bathroom was cleaned, very well, and took a lot of time to clean it. And as we discussed in the podcast, Brandon, that night, there was only 14 minutes where he was quote-unquote unaccounted for. And, the state to contend that he, even just the fact that he cleaned this bathroom so well in 14 minutes is crazy, but, that let alone, shooting both of his parents and stabbing both of his parents and taking a shower and hiding the murder weapon and all the other stuff that he would have had to have done.
For those who just now, very first time hearing about this case, please go check out Scott's movie called Texas Justice, written and directed by Scott Poggensee. Very well done.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. We're actually working on changing the format of that because we originally wanted it to just be a 90-minute documentary that we could submit to film festivals, but we have changed the goal now of the end game of this and trying to get it out to more people. So we're actually looking at talking to Netflix about it, which as you know, there's most of the
awesome.
most of the true crime documentaries on there are like 4 and 5, 6-part docuseries. So we're actually in the process of trying to change that format and kind of slow it down a little bit, make it a little more artistic and visually appealing, and submit it to Netflix, and hopefully they are interested.
Yeah. And the other thing, we need to take a break in just a minute, but you've been doing a podcast. Where can people find the podcast? What's it called?
Sure, it's the American Justice Podcast, and fittingly enough, it's AmericanJusticePodcast.com. But that has all of the...
That's just creative.
I try to bring up my creative side when I'm doing things like this, but
see,
but yeah, that has all the episodes, all the past episodes, and we are now to the point where with the release of the closing arguments and the verdict this morning, actually, we only have 2 episodes left, which is kind of a wrap up and just talking about Brandon's appeals. So if anybody wants to go binge listen to it, they can pretty much get the whole case, up until now. The upcoming 2 episodes upcoming are just, like I said, just kind of wrapping things up and just talking about the status of its appeals.
And you're listening to Lambda Weekly on 89.3 KNON FM. I'm Dave Taffet here in the studio with Lerone Landis, and we'll be back with more of Lambda Weekly right after this. We're talking to Scott Poggensee. We're talking with him again about the Brandon Woodruff murder case, or the case that Brandon Woodruff was convicted of that he couldn't possibly have done. Scott has been a crusader for Brandon for a number of years now, and he's made a documentary about him called American Justice. Yes?
Texas Justice.
Texas Justice. I knew that wasn't right. And has supported his appeals to the Texas Supreme Court of criminal appeals in the U.S. Supreme Court. Last time you were on, you had those appeals pending, Scott. What happened with them?
So there's 2 different. Just to give a little quick synopsis, there's 2 different issues that were being appealed. The first issue was a federal issue, which was going to the Supreme Court. That was an issue on Brandon's phone calls that he was making to his attorney being monitored and listened to by the state of Texas or the district attorney's office in Hunt County. That was a federal issue that was basically saying that his Sixth Amendment Sixth Amendment constitutional rights were violated, which was really not up in the air. The trial judge declared that they violated his Sixth Amendment rights. The only issue was, how do we fix it? And the way that the state decided to fix it was they appointed special prosecutors with the Attorney General's office. Of course, Brandon's opinion was, and his attorney's opinion was, that they should have dismissed the charges. You have a U.S. constitutional violation that, state doesn't get to do that, automatically dismiss the charges. So because there was an argument going back and forth, they had to appeal it all the way to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court only hears about 1 to 2% of the cases that are actually appealed to it. We felt like we had a good chance because there was a differing opinion amongst the federal circuit courts. Some were saying, like I think the one in D.C. and possibly the one in New York was saying that if there's a constitutional violation, it's an automatic dismissal. Of course, the ones in the South were saying, no, it's not an automatic dismissal. You have to prove that you were actually harmed. And then, so there were all these differing opinions across the United States in these federal circuit courts. Well, the Supreme Court's only job is to basically to settle disputes among the other federal courts. So we felt like we had a really good chance, but unfortunately they refused to hear the case. So, of course, once it's appealed to the Supreme Court and they deny hearing it, then there's no other options. The other issue was a state issue, and that's the one that actually goes to the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, and that one was basically a factual issue, saying that there were not enough facts to actually convict Brandon, and that his a conviction should be overturned because of that. The Texas Court of Criminal Appeals also refused to hear the appeal. So Brandon has never had an actual appeal heard in court at the highest level. There was one appeal that was heard at the kind of the local level, if you will, but that one was denied as well, just without going into too much legal detail. But basically they said, we have a lot of problems with the evidence in this case, but that's not really our job. Our job is just to determine if there were any procedural errors. There were no procedural errors, so you're going to have to appeal it to a higher court, and that's what they did, and the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals refused to hear it as well.
So can you, or not you personally, because I know you're not the attorney, but can cases be resubmitted to the Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court, even if they're denied?
Well, the Supreme Court, the issue that is being appealed is dead. If there are other federal issues that they can come up with, then they can always appeal that new issue. But as far as the Sixth Amendment violation, there's not really. It's pretty much dead. There's nothing that they can do with that because if they even tried to appeal it to a lower court again, they would automatically kick it out, saying, "Hey, the Supreme Court has weighed in." Because even though they basically refuse to hear it, that is weighing in, because it's just
that is weighing in.
Yeah, it's deferring to the lower courts, which obviously did not rule in Brandon's favor.
Mm-hmm. If there's new information, some new facts that come out, and since it was not submitted at trial, the fact that Mike knew that this computer was missing and he was the only one who knew it, and so therefore he's the only one who could possibly have been on the scene, can that be appealed?
So that's pretty much the only appeal that's left to Brandon, is what's called a writ of actual innocence, which is something that you bring to the original trial court. And you come back and you say in legal means that I'm not guilty, I can prove that I'm innocent, and here's how. And what you do with that point is you have, bullet points basically that say, I'm not guilty because of this and this and this, and you list all the different things that show that you're innocent. And that's what his attorneys and his investigators are researching right now. They're trying to get that particular writ formed so they can file it with the court. I'm not 100% sure whether or not that particular issue can be raised, but I do know that he has some other, I feel like, pretty strong issues that he's raising.
I would think some form of it could be submitted.
Well, the problem is, and one of the rules is that it has to be new evidence, and just the fact that that the tape or the interview was made available to the defense and they just didn't use it for whatever reason, that could be construed as it was just trial strategy. And it's very difficult to get around, that whole trial strategy argument.
So he was sentenced to, he's been in there for 15 years. What was the sentence, life?
Yeah, life without parole. He had the only way that he will get out of prison is if one of his appeals works.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
Okay, so let's go to another clip from the podcast. What's on clip 2?
So clip 2 is it's actually pretty interesting. I have interviewed several people that knew Brandon, that knew Mike, that knew some of their friend group back then, that several of them have not wanted to come forward because they were very afraid of Mike and these other people. So one person did agree to an interview, but this person, I'm being very careful with gender because this person's identity was hidden, and I had to change their voice, change their appearance. The appearance was blacked out, so you can't tell who this person is. But this person knew one of Brandon's friends named Joe Hagerman. Joe was kind of in the same group as Brandon and Mike and their other friend Dusty Perry. They were like the group that hung around together. And she basically is this person is basically saying that that they were very afraid of Joe for the kind of actions that he had done before.
I met with a friend. She showed me a snippet of a documentary, and it clicked to me like that. I was like, Joe told me all about that. Joe said, my friend's parents were murdered. They think it was some kids from school. I didn't understand if some kids at school did it, but already Brandon's sitting in jail, and I'm hearing about it 2 years after, in 2007. The general public thinks that Brandon did it. The prosecuting attorney thinks that Brandon did it. Everyone's led to believe that Brandon did it. I 100% believe that Joe had something to do with the murder of Denison Warner. I just want everyone to know I've never met Brandon. I've never spoke to Brandon. I wouldn't know Brandon if I talked to him. I do, however, know Joe Hagerman. The reason I came forward is because when I saw the snippet of the trailer for the documentary, there popped Joe's face. I got a sick to my stomach. My stomach dropped when I saw that because I didn't realize at that moment that I knew what was going on. That Joe told me about a murder that he's obviously involved in, and I don't want to see Brandon sit in jail for something he didn't do.
Again, the dramatic music. Josh, could you fix that for us?
No, I love it. So
I mean, she just dropped the mic, so I had to raise the music up a little.
Yeah.
So this is basically kind of like a new witness?
I mean, yes and no. It's definitely something that can give background to, other people and kind of show traits, I guess, about that person that may make them look suspicious. But you got to remember, the problem is when you're going in with this writ of actual innocence, you have to bring things that prove you're innocent. And just kind of, casting shadows on someone else doesn't necessarily prove, it's like, yeah, Joe may be a horrible person, but that doesn't mean that you didn't kill your parents. You know what I mean? So that's kind of that. It's a very fine line as to what evidence can be brought with that new writ or that new appeal.
So. I'm sorry, what's the guy's name who was was brought up as suspicious?
Mike.
So has Mike contacted you or anybody to say, hey, no, I didn't have anything to do with this? Or does he even have any idea that he might be kind of suspicious right now?
Yeah, well, I mean, he knows that he was even brought up in trial as much as possible. Like, for example, he told Ranger Collins that he was in bed asleep by 12:30 in the morning the night of the murders, and then turns out after Ranger Collins got the phone record 6 months later, after Brandon's been in jail for 6 months, turns out Mike actually made a phone call within 3 to 5 miles of the cell tower, within 3 to 5 miles of the actual murder scene at 2 o'clock in the morning.
And one of the things, Scott, that's really relevant is that Brandon's phone records for the day are missing.
To this day, right?
Exactly. There were 14 hours missing of Brandon's phone records, and the big key of that is that the one phone call out of all these 14 hours that could prove that Brandon was innocent, there was a 9:41 call between him and his girlfriend, and if they actually had the cell tower location, it would have proven that he was over at the house in Heath, which was 25 minutes away, at the time that the murders were going on. So if they had those phone records, Brandon never would have been brought to trial. But the state conveniently missing.
The thing with the house, his parents were in the middle of moving from Heath to
Royce City.
To Royce City, 25 miles away, right. And he needed to prove that. Is that something that can be appealed on? That the phone company provided records conveniently for the day before and week before and day after, but didn't have for that day.
Well,
Shouldn't
we had
an
at
appeals
least
court be looking?
We had at least 3 weeks of Brandon's records, and this was the only day that was missing. The problem, as we referenced earlier, is that it was brought up in court. Like it was established in court that these phone calls were missing, and basically the state's phone expert said, well, we just weren't given all the records because Singular and AT&T were merging, and it would just happen to be that he was on these Singular towers, and they just didn't send us those records, and blah blah blah. But the problem is, like you just said, is that it's the only day where there's calls missing. So unfortunately, that issue was already brought up.
Were they not merging the day before?
That's the point. But like I said, it was brought up at trial, so it's not the only way that we would be able to claim or bring new evidence is if we were somehow able to get those phone records. We believe, and this is just our opinion, but we believe that the state investigators, the deputy marshal that interpreted these phone calls, actually deleted these phone calls purposely. And the reason for that is because we found out through my investigation that the phone records that the state and the defense had were not the original records from the phone company. The phone company sent the records to the deputy marshal, and then the deputy marshal took those phone records and created his own report. So that is, if that's not suspicious, I don't know what is.
It is. Why don't we take our break? You're listening to Lambda Weekly on 89.3 KNON FM. I'm Dave Taffet here with Lerone Landis. And we're talking to Scott Poggensee. He is talking about the Brandon Woodruff case, which he updates us on, every 6 months or so. We'll be back with more right after this. And this is Lambda Weekly. I'm Dave Taffet here with Lerone Landis. Scott, we are social distancing here at KNON, which is why Patti is not here today, and it's why we end our shows right now 10 minutes before the hour. We'll be playing music those last 10 minutes while we wipe everything down, change the windscreens, and make it as safe as we can for each other. So I want to get right into this last clip that you have. Do you want to set this one up?
Absolutely. This is one that I believe and hope that really resonates with your audience. Ranger Collins, in his investigation, had the running theme that if Brandon can lie about his sexuality, if he can lie to his church friends and his school friends and his family about him being gay, well, then he can definitely lie about killing his parents. And this is something. Because they're the
same thing.
Yeah, well, to Ranger Collins it is, and that's the problem. That's what I try to to bring out to our community is basically, hey guys, if Ranger Collins, with his homophobic attitude towards this investigation, can arrest Brandon because he's hiding his sexuality, if it can happen to Brandon, it can happen to any of us. And that's why I really feel like, that this community is particularly targeted by Ranger Collins. And, there's several points in his investigation where he says these exact words. If he can lie about his sexuality, then he can lie about killing his parents. And this is just one example of many times that he says it all throughout the investigation. He's talking. Just to give you kind of who he's talking to. So one of Brandon's friends, one of his gay friends that he went to the S4 with and all of that, his name was Alex Ruley, who has unfortunately passed away since this trial. But he's talking to Ranger Collins, and he, they're talking about this whole concept of, well, if you can lie about, your sexuality, you can lie about killing your parents, and so this is a person that Brandon was dating at the time, and Ranger Collins kind of gives lip service to, oh, well, we don't care if he's gay, but he's telling us that he's straight and blah, 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 which is not true because Brandon never told Ranger Collins that he was straight. He just never asked him if he was gay, and, but anyway, so this running theme of this homophobic attitude is, this is just one example.
Gang stuff in there or something that he didn't want his friend to see. He said Rob was straight and didn't want to,
Okay.
That's what he told me.
Well, and now that's something too, because he's telling us that no, I'm straight, I've got a girlfriend and all that, but we're hearing from friends, that he is gay. But I mean, if you're going to lie about something little like that, then are you going to lie about something big? I mean, if you can lie something about your sexual orientation, then you ought to be able to lie about something big.
I mean, he told me that he was out, his dad knew and everything else, and he had a good relationship with him and everything else like that. I mean,
okay.
When did he tell you that? It was probably a few weeks ago that he told me his dad found out or something like that, and that his dad was really cool about it.
There's that phrase again. If Brandon can lie about something small like his sexuality, then he can lie about something big like killing his parents. I told you guys that this sentiment would come up over and over and over again in Ranger Collins' investigation. Also, remember when I shared during Susan Constantine's episode about how we felt like Ranger Collins was mostly a stand-up, honest guy, but his homophobia and preconceived notions would prejudice his investigation? This is what we're talking about. The notion that someone can murder both of their parents just because they're going through a completely normal coming out process is just abhorrent and disgusting. Yet it comes up in the investigation of Brandon Dale Woodruff over and over again. It's shameful.
Okay, so the one point he brings up is, well, he told me he had a girlfriend. Mm-hmm. Well, he did, didn't he?
He did. Yeah, he had a girlfriend for several years, and like I said, it was just one of those things that he was. I mean, as we can all, we can all relate to the struggling back and forth of, do I like guys or do I like girls or do I like both or I mean, he was in the middle of struggling that with himself.
Well, the other part of it was, and they did not have a discussion about this because Ranger Collins was so homophobic he couldn't even broach the subject of sex. He had a girlfriend, so they went out. They went to the movies. It had nothing to do with sex necessarily.
Right. That's exactly right. And from several people, Brandon and his girlfriend both, they say that it was definitely not a sexual relationship, but that was not something that, as you said, Ranger Collins was interested in hearing.
Can that be brought up on appeal in some way? I really would hate to trust the Texas courts to say, yeah, he was discriminated against because he was gay, but he was.
But essentially, that's what he was convicted off of.
Right, exactly, and that's because they
that's what the whole case is hinged on.
Exactly, and that's what I try to explain to people is that, it's not like the prosecution just stood up and said, hey guys, we got this gay guy over here and obviously he did it. They just used that coming out process to vilify his character and assassinate his character. And, if he can lie about being gay, then, he could lie about his friends and his finances and his killing his parents. Like, it's all the same, It's just ridiculous.
I think what Ranger Collins didn't understand was when he said he had a girlfriend, she was a girl, she was a friend, they'd been close, they went out.
Right.
And he didn't understand that kind of relationship in somebody who's all of 19. Some people come out and are sexual at younger ages, but 19 for somebody to come out is very normal.
Yeah.
And also, the Sixth Court of Appeals like I said earlier, Brandon did have that one hearing for an appeal that was what they call a direct appeal, which is basically just saying were there any procedural issues. And in the opinion, or within the oral arguments, I don't remember which one, but one of the judges was grilling the state and saying, wait a second, so I know that the state doesn't have to prove motive, but isn't it true that one of your motives is that Brandon was hiding his sexuality and he was experimenting with being gay and all of this stuff? And the state agreed, and then the judge came back and said, well, I mean, if that's the case, we're going to have to put barbed wire around every college in Texas, because that describes pretty much half the college students in Texas. And and so it's good that they recognize that that was a bogus motive. But the problem was, like I said, with that particular appeal, it was only a procedural thing. And they said in their opinion, we have a lot of issues with the evidence in this case, but that's not our job. You have to appeal it to the higher court. And as we all know, the higher court will not hear his appeal.
We only got about a minute and a half left, but I just wanted to point out, this happened back in, when you hear about this case, it sounds like something out of the 70s or even 60s. Yeah, because you're thinking there's no way something like this could happen in the 2000s. This happened in 2005 or 4?
2005, 15 years ago.
So it's not that long ago that a kid was convicted solely because of a homophobic inquiry that said that because he was hiding his sexuality, that was good that he was lying about something bigger, i.e., killing his parents.
And I think that's exactly right, Lerone. And I think, I guess the parting word here is, I think it's very important to point out for everybody, the audience, to realize is that it's not like we're just trying to ignore evidence that showed that Brandon was guilty. There was literally, in fact, in today's episode, I played the exact closing arguments from the state, from the trial transcript. And there is nothing in there where they even talk remotely about proof or evidence that Brandon was at that house when his parents were killed. It was all, Brandon's a liar and Brandon's, telling all these fibs, and you really can't trust anything Brandon says and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So it's not like there's any evidence that actually shows that he's guilty.
Yeah. Scott, one last, we're out of time, but how is Brandon doing right now?
He's doing all right. He's down in the Styles unit, which is in Beaumont, which is a very kind of lawless unit. So, he's a frail kind of gay kid, in the middle of all these criminals, and so we're always scared about any news that we get from him. But he's doing all right.
Do they have a gay unit in that prison?
He's in what they call protective custody, but the problem is that he's in protective custody with a bunch of other people that are in protective custody, and they're all a bunch of, scheming people down there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, give me a call next time you have new news about this. I know you will.
Well, I
appreciate you very much.
I appreciate you guys letting me on and talking.
Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thanks,
and
Scott.
for all of us
Talk to you later.
at Lambda Weekly, we'll see you next week.